Let's see if we're live, Mike.
It says live.
Oh, it does say live, huh? Let's check if the fist a book. Are we live? Can everyone out there see us and hear us? I believe so. So, let me let this load. All right, cool. Yeah, so I think we're good, Mike. I think we are live, and we're on the air. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, good. What's up, bro?
Are you enjoying the outdoors?
Yeah, it's nice. It actually cooled down because it was really hot the last couple days. It was about 100 degrees, so right now it's like 90, which is still hot, but I'm here by the Hudson. Look at that view.
That's beautiful.
Yacht club there, and then,
How's the humidity down there?
it's actually right now it's breezy, so you don't really feel too much humidity. I'm in Edgewater, New Jersey. It's fucking nice.
So I'm gonna enjoy a beer up here. Today is Thursday's celebratory Thursday here. You know, we've covered the week's events. There's a lot going on. In today's episode, we're gonna give an overview of the Qing Empire, Mike? Is it Qing Empire?
The Qing Empire.
Qing Empire all the way through CCP.
Yeah.
And this is a part of a multi-series videos that are kind of giving a background of China, a historical perspective, and an overview of history of China. And then we'll roll it into present day. And the reason we're doing this is because we're building context into China as a country, as a whole, and why things are looking the way they look now and what they could look like going forward. We'll get into that right after we cover just a quick little news update from this week related to China, since we are in this topic. And we just want to remind everyone that if you like the content you see here, if you want to subscribe and get email updates to these episodes, you can go to the nonconformist.io and you could subscribe for free right there on the home page. All right, Mike, let's go into the recent news from this week. And this is, and I'm going to read it off here because I didn't learn how to screen share yet on Restream, but I'm going to figure it out for people in the future. But this is straight from my Twitter account, J_Rapisarda, and it's a retweet from Zero Hedge. And Zero Hedge says, China's Global Times warns retaliation for Houston consulate closure will cause U.S. real pain. So one of the things that has happened is we've seen a series of events that have taken place from China over the last 2 years. Last year, Mike, I think China had called back their citizens and their students back to the homeland, and now we're seeing this retaliation by the United States, having them close their embassy. Now, I know that there are times in history we have seen this before. We've brought up, pre-World War or pre-bombing of Pearl Harbor, the Japanese embassies in the U.S. were closed down, burning of documents. You also brought up Russia, but why don't you build some context into this article and let me know what you think.
Yeah, so the United States has actually informed the Chinese government that they need to close down the consulate in Houston, Texas, because of suspicion of espionage. So the Chinese government started to apparently shred and burn documentation, and I'm sure a bunch of diplomatic sheets, and preparing to actually leave. I think it's by the end of the month they need to vacate. I need to get more details behind that, but that's the situation we're in right now. It's becoming more polarized, and it seems to actually show that we are actually going to posture against them. And I don't know what this is going to lead to in the short term, but in the long term, if this continues, it's going to lead into something a little more heated.
Yeah, so we know one thing that came to mind essentially to me was the fact that we've seen China as a rising world power competing against U.S., an existing world power. The U.S. as a reserve currency, that being the United States dollar, is now teetering kind of on the edge here as we're going through the response of COVID-19 and the economy getting shaken up. China's economy has bounced back quite quickly from this event, and they've been able to manage this. And they're continuing their reign as what seems like a new world power. We know that there's also a race within the currencies. People have really been misguided. The China issue, the trade war started as a currency war. It's just like the sayings, right? Currency wars lead to trade wars, lead to hot wars. And yeah, and the way that I view it is this is just kind of the next step of escalation through this form of nationalism and just hardening we've seen of countries and nations over the last 5 years, but really over the last 2 years, it's been a hurry. And it's going to be interesting seeing this play out with the currencies too, because I think that at some point or another, countries are going to have to decide which currency they side with. We know China is developing their own digital yuan, so we'll see what happens going forward with the digital dollar. But that's kind of what we have. You got anything else on that, Mike?
No, well, right now, like you said, we're trying to see what's going on with the currency situation. We are hearing rumors in the United States that we will get another stimulus run. So what could that mean? Many things could come from there, right? Mitch McConnell was just saying that this next stimulus, or whatever it's going to be called, I'm not sure what it is, but it's not going to be in one act or one, bill. It's going to be in multiples. Not multiple payments, but multiple bills, meaning that each bill will actually introduce something different. And from one of the previous proposals that I actually heard from the House, one of the proposals was actually to introduce a digital currency within that stimulus. So I want to see if that's going to be presented in this new proposal. I don't know, because they haven't said many. They're keeping their cards close. They're negotiating in closed doors. But Trump is already talking about, approving soon. I guess this is the last week for the $600 a week unemployment stimulus. So they're saying they want to extend it, but there's a lot of rumors behind it. So if this is similar to what was being proposed within the House beforehand, this could actually give way to a digital dollar. So we're not sure.
And that's been our thesis this entire time. If you've been following us since last September when we started the Nonconformist, actually started documenting research that we had been building for about a year before that. I got a nice deck I found, Mike, from last August, painting a picture and telling the story. It'll be interesting to me to see, the outcome of this. And I think you're right. I think this is the catapult. This is what leads into the digital economy, the connected age. People's perception of time is so short. If you look at it as a whole, right, the internet, we're just seeing kind of what it's really doing to us, what it's doing to industry, what it means. We think that we are a connected economy now, but we are not in a connected economy yet. And we will be going there now. And these are the issues that nation states are facing, creating new currencies. China has agreed and committed to being a leader in blockchain technology. There you go. And then they're developing 5G, and we see Huawei with the issues. So, from an investment point of view, from a liberty point of view, from a wealth preservation point of view, these are important topics for you to understand, because they will allow you to not just kind of survive these periods, but prosper off these periods, and that's what we try to provide here. But Mike, let's get into the history too. What do you think?
So I wanted to bring up the history of the 1800s China, especially when the Qing Dynasty was in their 3rd century, because they started around the 1600s. So right into the 1800s, that's when things became very turbulent for the nation. And I want to bring this up because right now, right, we're talking about China and what they're doing with the positioning of Hong Kong and Taiwan. This goes back to the 1800s. The 1800s in Chinese history is viewed as a time of shame, a time of losing face within the global community. So that being said, knowing what happened within the 1800s gives you a preview of why they position themselves the way they do right now. And if you don't understand history, then you don't understand what they're doing right now and why they're looking at the future the way they are doing so. So going back to the 1800s, right? China, under the Qing Dynasty, was set in a way that they were actually one of the global leaders in the economy. They had one of the strongest economies in the world, this being because they produced silk, and not only silk, tea was their big export. England became very addicted to tea. And because of this, England, using the East Indian Trading Company, they used to import a lot of tea. They imported so much tea that they pretty much went into debt. They were China, the only way China actually did business with England was through, selling them tea in exchange for silver. England gave up so much silver that they almost, they went into deep debt. And not only that, they came out of the American Revolution losing and going into deep debt already. So, you have all of this going on. England didn't really produce anything of importance to the world. They lost already the 13 colonies. So that alone put a huge dent into their, business. Now, they had India at the time, and India was to be positioned as the great, cotton exporter. But since, you had the 13 colonies, now it became, the United States of America, and then you had the Americas itself divvied up between other world powers like Spain and Portugal, right? England just didn't have what it took to position itself as a world power. So they were being crippled. Now, England was very angry at China because China only wanted to take silver, so they were being propped up to be very wealthy and well established, and they had really strong trade laws against England, and England hated that. So China was very strict. China actually, it was divided a bit because China had its center in the north by Beijing. That's where, the emperor lived, and that's where the empire was actually run by.
So this was really
And
colonial.
then
Was this colonialism, Mike? The spread of colonialism, almost like you said. So like the 13 colonies, you had the new nations forming, and then you had kind of the East that was left out of that new world that was being built, and they kind of that's that mix that was kind of happening.
In a way, but the thing is that England, they were the world power, and then they got hurt when America succeeded, and now they're being hurt the way America right now is, right? We import everything here. We hardly export products. So, and on top of that, we're in a deficit. We're in debt. That's the same thing that England was at the time of the 1800s. They came out of a war deeply indebted, the same way we are. It's a story that repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference here is, China was actually very successful. Now, China created think of it as a free trade zone. So you had Canton, which is modern-day Guangzhou, part of China. So Canton was a port that China actually allowed free traders, ocean traders they're called, to actually operate with the Western powers. So they created this section, and it's called Kehong. So Hong pretty much means like trading, ocean traders. It's like a market. It's a type of like open market,
Okay.
trading type of word. So they had that center there in Canton. and that's where England started to do a lot of commerce with them, right? But that's where they got early tea. Now, when they're in such a trade deficit with China, the Brits were pissed, and they couldn't do anything with India when it came to getting money for cotton. They started to harvest poppies, and that was a huge thing, right? So they started creating a lot of poppy, and then they took Calcutta. Calcutta was the farthest east that England could establish itself, and they made a drug market. And so the pirates from China and the smugglers, they started to smuggle in opium into China, and then China became heavily addicted, similar to how Colombia started to use Mexico as a base of operations to export cocaine into America. The Brits did that, and they pretty much created a highly addicted society in China. And now they pretty much flipped the script. So England started to make massive amounts of money, and then China started to resent England because now their society is being crippled by this new drug. And so they started to implement a drug war. And so they started to implement these drug wars and sanction England and all of that. And England got really angry, and they sent out emissaries and all of that to actually delegate and change certain trade rules, and it just escalated, and then that's where you got the first Opium War, and the second is pretty much there wasn't a second, it's pretty much the first, but the Opium Wars is what actually crippled the Chinese Qing Dynasty Empire. So the Chinese lost land because the Brits had a strong navy. So the Chinese attacked the British Navy because they were, they kept pushing opium. They kept actually encroaching on Chinese land. And because the Chinese started to defend themselves, it instigated the war even more. And then the Brits pretty much won. And they actually took the land of Hong Kong, which actually was an island, and then with the second Opium War, they took over more land. So now you have Hong Kong, and then the Brits pretty much kept that. And then in the late 1800s, because of the collapse of the Chinese economy, the Japanese looked at that as a great way of actually, exploiting it. And then the Japanese came in, and they destroyed them too, and took over Taiwan. So if you look at that right there,
it's interesting, and I can't even I don't know if we're going to use Restream anymore. Restream, if you're out there, you guys got to get on this game. I'm trying to share screens. I can't even share screens, pissing me off. But I have a slide here of showing the estimates of relative standing of great empires. Essentially, it's a line graph that shows what country was a world power at that time. And to your point, the 1800s it looks like from 1800, just before 1800 was the last peak of the Chinese Empire, and then it started to quickly decline. And then by 1850, it was split in half as the U.S. was crossing, and then it dropped to its lowest in 1950, or just before 1944, actually. It looks like probably World War II. So, it's what we're seeing is really a rebound of an empire that actually had quite a history of being a world power.
Empire. They had a couple golden ages, and the golden ages actually collapsed after the 1800s. You had the Brits that came in with the second type of Opium War, and what they did, they forced the dynasty to actually, open up that economy to the Western powers, like the America, even though they weren't fighting against them, they all were able to benefit off of that. So it crippled them, and then the Japanese crippled them even more. So they lost Taiwan, they lost Hong Kong. Now they enter the Industrial Revolution, and since their economy was crippled, they were never able to actually adapt and be part of that Industrial Revolution. So they kept lacking and lagging. And then now we go into the 1900s, and China's, they're lagging behind in the economy. America's moving up. England is trying to keep their empire moving, but they're also a little shaky. And then you have World War One, and that's where things become interesting in China because now the Qing Dynasty collapses in 1911, 19, in that decade. And since they collapsed, now you have a civil war within China. So you have a civil war. You have a time in China where there is warlords in provinces fighting against each other. So there's complete chaos in China, right? And at the same time, we have World War One starting to creep up. You
Hmm.
also have a lot of people leaving China into America, Europe. So there's a lot going on there. And I'm trying to shorten this as much as I can. But then from there, right, you have World War II is coming about. So the Japanese start to go
Yeah,
through.
what was the existence? What was the existence during that? Because this brings up a current issue that we're seeing that just kind of shows the escalation or control from China in that region of the world, and their region of the world is that of the South China Sea, and we know that they've slowly been retaking islands that they claim has always belonged to China in the South China Sea, from the Philippines, off the coast of the Philippines, off the coast of Taiwan. These presidents from these countries have been speaking out for a year or so now. We know that all their training drills have been based on ocean front invasions and island invasions. So this is an important part because we saw those islands be taken away from them, I imagine, during World War II. But
Even before then, because we're mentioning Hong Kong. Hong Kong was not even actually anything. It was empty. There were pirates and all of that. And then when the Brits came in the Opium War, they won and they took that. That's why they call it Hong. Comes from Kahong, which is that word of like pretty much of commerce. So they
mhm.
created that there. So they lost that. On top of that, they lost Taiwan and the Sino. Forgot the name of that war, but it was in the late 1800s with the Japanese.
Yep,
Um,
that's all right.
they
Keep going.
yeah they lost a bunch of islands, and on top of that, because of the Opium Wars, they lost a bunch of land and islands too that they laid claim. There was really not a lot of claim to them because you had the Philippines, which the Spanish had, and then you had like Macau, which the Portuguese had.
Hmm.
And so you had a lot of colonial powers that took over these little islands too. So whose land is that? And then think of it, actually, when those colonial powers leave, and now these countries become independent, a lot of these little islands become a place of contention because the Chinese at the time looked at it as it was stolen land because of the colonials took over that land, and since they took over that land, they incorporated within the colonies they owned. And then when the colonies became independent from their masters, they laid claim to those lands. So it's like no man's land, but it's weird. It's hard to explain, but think of it. It's like saying right now, Spain telling the United States, Puerto Rico belongs to us. And Puerto Rico's like, no, we belong to us, and the United States like, no, that belongs to us. It's something like that.
Mm.
So it's very
Yeah,
complicated
yeah,
because you
yeah,
have
yeah.
colonialism, you have all types of stuff in there. But then going up to the Japanese, right? The Japanese took over the Koreas in World War II, and then they went through Manchuria, and then from Manchuria they went through China. Now China was in a civil war between the nationalists and then they called the Republicans or the Republic, the ones that actually wanted a capitalist society. All of that, they had all of these little civil war situations there, and so the Japanese came and they just destroyed them. And now the left and the right in China, they united to fight against the Japanese, but they got slaughtered. And then they became one of the four allied powers. So you had America, you had England, you had Russia, the Soviet Union, and then you had China. They all united to fight against, the Axis powers. Now, when Japan lost and surrendered, they lost Taiwan. So losing Taiwan pretty much is saying that Taiwan belongs to China. But at the time, China's in a civil war. So at that time, it was called the Republic of China. So the Republic of China, being mainland China, was in a civil war after the end of World War II, and Mao Zedong was able to win. And since they won, the 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 enemy, you could say, the losing power, the political family, they moved into Taiwan, and then they called it the Republic of China, and then Mao Zedong called the mainland China the People's Republic of China. And then from there, that's when you have the CCP, right? The Communist Party of China is actually comes out of that. So I'm sorry for the confusion and all that. It's hard to really break it down in such a short period of time. But all of that just creates what it is at that point of time. And then we'll continue on the next episode to explain what happens from 1947, 1948, all the way until now. Because it's still the same party. We just have different leaders.
Man, dude. And here we are. Well, it's important for people.
Right? It goes back to here we are that they want Taiwan back. They want Hong Kong back. Right? Because that to them it belongs to them. And all of these little lands around South China Sea. And then on top of that, remember the 1800s, they went from a golden age to an age of shame. So they're trying to recuperate that face. They're trying to, so there's all of that is mixed into what's going on right now behind China and the world. So we have all of this.
Well, we know they've been buying large amounts of gold. We've been talking about that on the Nonconformist. Now we're seeing that there's a metal shortage around the world, and we all know that by what the U.S. has announced on the coinage shortage, right? I was walking into Stop and Shop today, and I saw, because of the coinage shortage, but what people don't realize is that there's no physical metal around the world right now. So if you had been listening to us, you would have been buying gold at $1,300 an ounce, $1,300, $1,400 an ounce. Now it's at $1,980. So it's about to smash through that all-time high.
And silver jumped too. Silver's going up.
Silver. And it's funny you talked about silver, because there we go. Another direct representation of silver being used as a means of exchange, as true money. And silver now is on its way to $250 to $500 an ounce. So we're going to see that go up. Cryptos are up now. So update on everyone with cryptos. As of yesterday, the United States made an announcement that every single bank institution in the United States can now offer custodial services, crypto custodial services to their clients. So don't be surprised if in the mail in the next couple weeks you're going to get a little flyer that's going to say, would you like exposure to Bitcoin? Would you like exposure to this? But if you were following the Nonconformist when we were telling you, you would have been buying down at $4,000 an ounce. You would have been buying down at $5,000 of Bitcoin. But no. So get over and listen. But here we are, Mike. So, I mean, we're going to see it going forward, and this is going to be the battle. The history is there. It's important for people to know, to build in the context, so that when you're watching TV, you're not getting sucked into all the propaganda necessarily.
Yeah,
and now you kind of have a background.
They don't talk about any of that. People don't understand the history. But, remember, they understand their history, and their nation is taking a stance. Because of all of this, that's their mentality. We don't understand that. They understand us. We don't understand them. So, we have this political battle between both, and our government has looked at them as the enemy, and us as a nation, they're looking at them as that, but we don't even understand them. So this is a way to actually start learning. And on top of that, let me tell you what, the mainstream media doesn't really talk about much aside from Russia. That's all they talk about is Russia, Russia, Russia. Oh, Russia apparently is stealing vaccine information and all that. Okay, how about you mention why it is that they're shutting down the embassy in China? And that's what's weird here, right? Tell me it isn't weird that, the media talks out, Russia's trying to infiltrate the elections, and England came out with a document, talking about Russia and its encroachment. And they keep talking about that, what's going on with the consulate closing down. There has to be information of why that's happening, why they're burning all their documents. Something's happening, but the media doesn't want to talk about it. That's why I believe the media is bought and paid for by, the CCP. It just has to be, because they never talk about it. They don't talk about anything. They don't say that they're trying to manipulate our elections or anything like that. They don't speak about anything. So it's good to actually look into all of this stuff.
That's a good point, Mike. And we'll be here with you the whole way, documenting it from what will probably become the bunkers. We'll see. We'll have some good info on some solar-powered catamarans, how to find your escape. But Mike, that's gonna be it though. I gotta go. I gotta go pack some clothes up here. I gotta go do my thing here. But again, if you like what you heard, like, follow, share. If you're trying to learn more about Bitcoin, you can go to adoptbitcoin.com. If you want to learn more about Monero, we'll have the Learn Monero up soon. And if you're looking to subscribe to the Nonconformist, again, it's at thenonconformist.io/subscribe. That's it, Mike.
All right, brother. All right, guys. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.
I can't do hand signals anymore. What if I do spirit fingers? Is that something?